At the moment in Britain, all of the museums and castles and historic sites are pretty much closed. Because of this, we thought we'd give you a few guided tours of some of these amazing places. One of my favourite places to visit, and arguably one of the world's best aviation museums, is the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. It's renowned as being one of the world's leading museums and houses a huge collection of historic aircraft from all around the world. The site of Duxford is an exhibit itself. The airfield has its own history that stretches back to the First World War, and most of the hangars are original and date back to this time as well. It played a central role in some of the most dramatic days of the 20th century, serving as a base for many of the Spitfires and Hurricane pilots who fought during the Battle of Britain. Throughout this video, we'll show you around the exhibits and the different aircraft that you can look out for. We'll revisit the story of Duxford shortly, however the pictures you are seeing is from the remarkable AirSpace exhibition. Next to the entrance of the museum stands AirSpace. It's home to a huge amount of aircraft, and this exhibition is an award winner. Inside this huge modern looking hangar is a breathtaking display of over 30 of the greatest and most famous military and civilian aircraft. AirSpace tells the story of aviation in Britain and the Commonwealth. On the first floor is a number of exhibitions you can take yourself through, including an original piece of fabric from the original Wright brothers flyer. The main expanse of the exhibition contains some amazing aircraft. It focuses on different phases of aviation, from early flights to modern aircraft. Throughout this exhibition, you can see a number of these early aircraft, such as the de Havilland DH-6, which is one of the oldest aircraft on display. What strikes you about AirSpace is the colossal size of the exhibition. When walking around the platform, your eyes are immediately drawn to the huge and historic Lancaster bomber. This aircraft obviously had an integral role in night raids against German towns during the Second World War. These night raids would lead to the deaths of thousands of civilians in different areas of Germany. Next to the Lancaster is Concorde, and this particular model is one of the first and earliest Concorde aircraft. What strikes you about this is how large this amazing piece of aviation is. Also, fortunately, you can have a walk around Concorde and investigate the different parts of this aircraft. There's also different pieces of military hardware and engines all around this hangar. On certain days they have different experiences where they open up different aircraft too, and you can go on board. We were able to get on board a Comet 4 when we visited, and we were transported to the early age of the transatlantic flight. On board this aircraft is a real historic experience, and you can get a real feel for the old school civil aviation aircraft. There's also aircraft used in the Berlin airlift which you can get onto. Also inside AirSpace is a large amount of training aircraft like the Avro Anson and the Fairey Swordfish, and a number of historic planes like the Spitfire. However, your eyes are drawn to the huge colossal size of the Vulcan. This V-bomber had a huge effect during the Cold War and acted as a huge deterrent to other nations. Also, there are a number of different other terrifying V-bombers at Duxford, including the Victor and the Valiant, which were capable of carrying Britain's nuclear deterrent. The more modern aircraft on display consist of the Jaguar, the Tornado, and also at Duxford they do have a Eurofighter Typhoon. However, soon this will be relocated to Newark's Air Museum. The Flying Aircraft Hangar is one of the smallest hangars at Duxford. It's the second hangar that you will come across following a visit to AirSpace, and this hangar focuses on aircraft that still fly today. Much of the aircraft which was in this hangar when we visited was American, however there were some Spitfires around too. Every year, the aircraft seen in this hangar take part in a large air show called Flying Legends. If you visit on a weekday, you can see a number of volunteers and employees who are here working on the aircraft. They also fit new parts here too, and it's interesting to see also some of the aircraft's owners who are working here as well. When we visited, we saw a number of historic aircraft in this hangar, including a Corsair and one of the only flying fortresses still flying today in Europe. All of the aircraft in this hangar need regular maintenance and TLC. Interestingly, in this hangar too, we managed to see a replica of the Red Baron's aircraft from the First World War. Although this aircraft is a replica, the museum does possess the actual engine from the Red Baron's fighter. The aircraft inside this hangar regularly changes depending on the work that needs doing or when work is carried out, so when you visit, expect to see different aircraft in here. As an island, Britain used to base its defences on the control of the sea. This changed during the First World War, when the threat from German airships arrived, with them bombing British towns and cities. Since then, Britain's air and sea forces have had to work together, and this exhibition and hangar celebrates that. The air and sea hangar contains a number of important historic aircraft that has importance to the Air Force but also to the Navy. When you enter this hangar, your eyes are drawn straight away to the diverse number of aircraft you can see. As soon as you walk in, you are greeted by a Blenheim, and also, when we visited, we saw a huge number of Spitfires and Hurricanes within this hangar, most probably due to the fact there had just been an air show on. Interestingly, these Hurricanes and Spitfires we'd actually seen fly at air shows. As you work your way around the exhibition, you come across different naval aircraft such as Sea Vixens, Fairy Gannets and the infamous Hawker Siddeley Buccaneer. These aircraft, when compared to the Spitfire and Hurricane within this hangar, act as a reminder of how quickly technology in the aviation industry progresses. There are also a number of interesting artefacts towards the back of this hangar, including a German mini-submarine. This mini-submarine was a one-man operated German submarine, however it was largely ineffectual, but it shows the different technologies deployed during the Second World War. Also, in this part of the exhibition, there is a piece of wreck from the Tirpitz, as well as part of a Mitsubishi Zero, which fought in the Pacific Theatre. The Battle of Britain exhibition shows how Britain's air defence has evolved from the First World War through to the Jet Age. At its heart is the Battle of Britain itself, the effort to save Britain, which took place by the RAF in 1940. In May 1940, Hitler launched his offensive on the Western Front, and after a few days, his armies had burst through the Allied lines, and within 2 weeks, Duxford squadrons had been ordered south to cover the evacuation of soldiers from Dunkirk. The aircraft from Duxford flew dozens of times, with several pilots being killed or becoming prisoners of war. Britain now faced the threat of invasion. It was a danger brought home to Duxford by the nighttime bombing raids conducted by the Luftwaffe. Duxford's airfield escaped with a few near misses, but regularly the sound of anti-aircraft batteries became normal and reports of damage to the nearby towns and villages rose. Inside this hangar are a number of different aircraft that remained integral to the Battle of Britain. Included in here are a number of Hurricanes and Spitfires, but also more interestingly, a Messerschmitt Bf 109. This particular aircraft crash landed in Sussex, with the pilot being taken prisoner. Also in this hangar, you can see some of the technology developed in Britain to adapt with air raids, such as shelters, AA guns and other bunkers made to shelter people. There are also a number of Second World War lorries and vehicles in this hangar. Towards the back there is a number of Cold War aircraft too, such as a MiG, and also some more modern day aircraft. There is also a Gloucester Meteor in this hangar and some other interesting exhibits. One of these is a tail fin from a Heinkel that was shot down, but also a V1 rocket. This flying bomb brought terror to Britain and was one of Hitler's most devastating weapons that he unleashed against Britain. The Conservation in Action hangar is a rather interesting hangar to visit. Throughout here is regularly different aircraft that's having work done. When visiting, we managed to see a number of different planes. However, when we did visit, there was no one completing this work as it was a weekend. All of the exhibits in this hangar have been restored using donations from the museum and from the public. This hangar also has a number of different World War I and World War II guns and field guns that were used in the conflict. The American Air Museum tells the story of the collaboration between Britain and America in war. It focuses on how American air power has played such a huge part in conflicts around the world in the 20th and 21st century. Developing aviation in the US came during the First World War, with America's involvement. The US would quickly have almost 200,000 airmen by 1918, and would have almost 3,500 aircraft in Europe. The huge might of production that was and is available in the US has led to innovation and development in the aviation industry. Inside this hangar are some incredible aircraft, some of these small, some of these absolutely colossal. There are a number of Second World War aircraft within this museum, including the B-24 Liberator, the famous B-17 Flying Fortress, and many more. They also have some of the faster flying aircraft, such as the P-47 Thunderbolt and the Mustang. The pilots of these quicker aircraft were tasked with accompanying the bombing aircraft and escorting the bombers to their targets. Bomber crews would have to fly sometimes for up to 11 hours to carry out their mission, and every mission was fraught with danger. The Second World War aircraft that are featured in this museum show how important the American influence was in leading to an Allied victory in the Second World War. One of my favourite aircraft in this museum is the Dakota. This aircraft was used heavily in parachuting soldiers into Normandy on D-Day, and also at Arnhem, helping Allied soldiers cross the Rhine. Also in this museum is a number of aircraft used in the Pacific Theatre, including the Boeing B-29 Superfortress. This aircraft caused devastating damage in raids on Japan in June 1944. Bombing from aircraft such as the Superfortress led to 800,000 casualties and millions becoming homeless. Inside the American Museum is also a number of Cold War aircraft, for example the remarkable Lockheed Blackbird, the remarkable reconnaissance record-breaking aircraft. There is also the Stratofortress, a huge bomber that could inflict bombing campaigns on the Soviet Union from bases in the US. The American Air Museum is a museum that contains a number of humbling memorials and reminders about how warfare has changed over the years. There is rubble from the Twin Towers inside this museum, and also reminders of the conflicts with Iraq, including the playing cards with important and villainous high-ranking Iraqi generals on to help soldiers identify them. This operations room was the nerve centre of RAF Duxford during the Battle of Britain. It was here that information on enemy aircraft was gathered and plotted on the map. Then aircraft could be dispatched to deal with any threats.
literally looks like it's been untouched.
The Land Warfare exhibition is easy to miss at Duxford, as it's tucked away at the end of the runway and seems miles away from the AirSpace exhibition where you start your day. In my opinion though, it's possibly the best part of the site. It tells you the story of many different artillery pieces, tanks, trucks and other military vehicles, and how warfare became mechanised. It charters this from the First World War to the present day. Featuring amazing pieces of artillery from First World War, you are walking through a journey of the conflicts that plagued Europe in the 20th century. You can see a number of interesting vehicles, including service trucks. By making your way around this room, you come across a number of tanks, including a T-34 and a Joseph Stalin, a colossal Soviet tank. There is also the tank that was made up to look like a Tiger I in the film Saving Private Ryan. One of the best parts of this exhibition is the Normandy experience. This looks at the invasion from the point of view of the people who took part and the equipment they used. As you walk through this, you come across some truly historic vehicles, including a Hetzer, a Duck, and different pieces of artillery and weapons. Also in this part of the exhibition is Monty's caravans. These are the actual caravans that General Montgomery travelled round in, including his office, his bedroom, and a map room. These allowed Monty to gain some solitude for him to plan out his campaigns in Europe. Also in this section of Duxford are some more modern tanks, such as a Centurion and a Chieftain, and even some tanks that have seen action recently in Afghanistan. Overall, Duxford really is a remarkable place to visit. Hopefully this video has allowed you to enjoy exploring it, even though it's currently shut. Once again, thank you for watching.